To define ticket layout and fields, we need to navigate to the Ticket View GUI design. Underneath, we will see the UI definitions are broken into 4 main sections. The word pages refers to tabs or forms for tickets that can have different fields in each. The system pages contain default built-in tabs that apply to all tickets. For example, a ticket will always have a description, a status, and a history page. Custom pages allow administrators to append to the basic pages defined above. We can have up to 5 custom pages. Functional pages allow us to define which fields are applicable to each of the actions we perform on a ticket. For example, creating a new ticket, forwarding, closing, or reopening a ticket. This section is completely different than what we define under the system pages, as the system pages only apply to existing tickets. For example, we can have a completely different looking form when we submit a new ticket and have it look very different when the ticket has been submitted. This may be useful in the case where we don't have all the information for a ticket up front, therefore excluding some of the fields to save us some of that initial data entry time. Lastly, the functional views allow us to customize which pages are visible during submission and when looking at an existing ticket. Let's take a look at this in action. On any existing ticket, we will always see our system pages. For example, the description, the history, and the status pages. For this particular ticket, these are the fields that we defined for the description page. However, if we go and submit another type of ticket, we'll see a completely different set of fields that are for the submission page. And we'll show you throughout this video how we can configure this. Let's start with the basics on adding fields. To do so, we go to the description page and click on Setup to add a field. A list of available fields appear on the left-hand side and are filtered by this drop-down. There's really no difference between system fields and custom data pages, except that when ServiceWise was first introduced, system fields were default fields that were always available for a ticket. For example, the title and the description. Since then, we've added 10 additional custom data pages that can contain roughly 50 fields in each. As you can see, you shouldn't run out of fields for any type of ticket. Let's go ahead and add the database field to this description page. I click on the field, I move it over to the right. I can, at this moment, choose to relabel it if I need to, and I hit OK. This database field now appears on the form, but I'm able to move it around to customize my form. For example, if I wanted to put it under the priority field, I simply drag and drop the fields around to change the UI. We're not quite ready yet to roll out this field. If I double click on this field, I can define its properties. For example, I can rename the field, and clicking on the ellipsis button, I'm able to relabel it for each of the additional language packs I have installed. Since this field is a drop-down list, I can click on the Setup button to add additional items to this list. For example, I'm going to add MySQL to our database field. Active items appear on the left-hand side, and if I move an item over to the right, it becomes unusable for future tickets, while retaining ticket history for existing tickets. Back in the previous screen, I can also set this field as a child field of another field. For example, the subcategory drop-down list field is currently set as the parent. This allows me to define which database choices are available for selection based on the subcategory selection. In this example, I'm going to pick database driver and indicate that these are my choices that I'm able to select whenever database driver is selected. A better example of this is defining a priority matrix as a best practice per IDLE standards. Looking at the priority field, here are our choices. I've set this field to be based on 2 parents, the impact and the urgency fields. As an example, we're indicating that whenever the impact is across a department and the core service is down, the priority is set to be critical. Switching back to our database field, the last thing I'm going to define is the access controls for both the team and the end users. I'm going to set it so that the field is always visible and editable for the team, but never visible for our end users. We're now ready to roll out our change in real time by reloading our web settings. Looking at an existing ticket, we should now see our database field. We currently cannot select anything in this field because it's related to our subcategory field. So if I select database issue for category and database driver for subcategory, I should now be able to pick something for our database. The database field has only been added to existing tickets, but not on new tickets. So we now have to navigate back to the admin and go under our new function pages to add the database field. Adding a field to a new function page is exactly the same thing we did before. Click on Setup, and we're going to move the database over to the right, hit OK, and now our forms for existing and new tickets should be consistent with each other. Last thing I want to show you now is how we can create custom fields. Back in Setup, select a custom data page and click on Add. Short text fields allow us to either have an edit or a combo box, but it's restricted to 255 characters if it's an edit box. Long text works the same way as short text. For a field like description, where you have unlimited data, you'll want to use a memo field. For drop-down lists and checkboxes, we'll want to use the integer field. It can also have an edit box, but it'll be restricted to numbers only. Lastly, for multiple select fields, we need to go under Field Design, Multiple Selection Controls. We can choose to add additional or edit the existing ones, and we'll need to go to any page to add a multiple select box. Click on Setup, and go all the way down to multiple selection fields, and move that over to the right. And we now have our multiple selection. Double-clicking on it can define a list very similar like the drop-down, except we can now select multiple items from this list.